However, it's not just on these shores. In fact, the hotter than normal summer has been felt in countries around the world. And in places like Greece and Japan, it's been accompanied by disasters with a huge human cost. So, is the extreme weather proof of climate change? Joining me from Reading is Professor of Climate Science at the University of Reading, Richard Allen. Richard, thank you very much for being with us. So we will start with that very big question, shall we? Can we attribute the weather conditions that we've not just been seeing here in the UK, but around the world, to climate change?
Well, I mean, we've got some very unusual but not unprecedented weather patterns that have produced these series of heat waves across the UK and especially Scandinavia and Europe, but also, as we saw in your report earlier, in the Western United States, Canada and Japan, but also flooding events in Japan and Mongolia. And these are associated with the weather patterns. But what we can say is that climate change, due to human emissions of greenhouse gases, are making these events more severe. They're making heat waves more severe and intense rainfall and flooding events more severe.
We're just looking at some pictures from Japan of the flooding there. Can you explain just the link between an increase in global temperature and the increased rainfall?
Yeah, so as the planet warms, the atmosphere can hold more moisture, and moisture is the fuel for heavy rainfall. So when heavy rain is occurring, it's sucking in that moisture from all the surroundings and dumping it out as intense rainfall. So in a warmer climate, there's more moisture, and your heavy rainfall event becomes even more severe, more intense.
Is it your assessment that we're past that we've reached a tipping point, that we're past the point of no return now?
Well, no. I mean, we are on the pathway. We're seeing climate change happening as we sit around. We're seeing this as a pattern of global events happening and occurring, but it's a pattern over time. So it's not something that's just going to gradually get worse. And it's something that, we can do something about by reducing our emissions of greenhouse gases substantially, as is directed by the Paris Climate Agreement.
We're now looking at some of the pictures from Greece and those horrible, awful stories of people having to throw themselves into the ocean to escape the wildfires. I mean, we in this country, frankly, despite the fact that it has been incredibly hot and sticky and almost intolerable, we've had it pretty easy. We've had it pretty good compared to other parts of the world. That might not last that much longer, though.
Well, I mean, we're kind of lucky in this country in that we do have the influence of the Atlantic Ocean to temper our climate. It doesn't have such big differences between winter and summer, so we're buffered a little bit against climate change in this country. But other countries, for example, we've seen in Greece, but also California, as you dry out soils, as you get a heat wave, you get these knock-on effects and vicious circles that make these events more severe, because as you dry out the soil, you can heat the ground even more, all that extra sunshine. You can also make it more susceptible to these terrible wildfires that we've been seeing in Greece and also California, as you mentioned earlier.
I mean, what are the short and long-term implications for the global water cycle of these kind of extreme weather events?
Well, what we can say is that the most intense rainfall events will become heavier, so there'll be more severe, more flooding associated with some of them, not all of them. But definitely heavier rainfall as the planet warms. But also the atmosphere, as it warms, it becomes almost more thirsty for sucking moisture out of the soil. So in some regions that are dry, when you get prolonged dry events, prolonged droughts, then these will be more severe as well as the planet warms.
How long do we have, Professor, to get this sorted, to get to grips with the issue of climate change? Well,
I mean, we are getting to grips with it as we speak, but too slowly. So substantial cuts in greenhouse gases, but we're starting. What we need to do is ramp up these efforts, and that's the only way to reduce the actual amount of climate change. And the other aspect is we will also need to adapt to the changing climate as well, particularly in poorer countries that are less able to afford the infrastructure that will protect people from severe climate events.
Professor Richard Allen, many thanks for being with us. Now, it came